Okay, this is going to be a post-mortem video for this Tektronix scope. The main board is junk, and I'll show you where right there. I don't know if you can see how that trace is kind of blackened. Well, that trace is arcing across to that solder joint there, and they're totally different circuits. And where the solder joint is, you should have 85 volts, and where this blackened trace is, it should be, I can't remember now, 350 volts or something like that. I determined this not long after I filmed that last video. This is just the first chance I've had to mention it again. I've been kind of busy here the past couple of weeks, but whenever I was doing the hotspot checking, I could tell there was a hotspot there, but with my dim bulb tester, it was limiting the current enough that while it was definitely getting hot, I couldn't really tell what was going on with it. But I just finally said to heck with it and plugged the thing in and looked down in there, and that black spot basically turns red, and you see arcing across there. And then also on the other side of the circuit board, right in there, I tried to resolder. I thought maybe I could resolder these and clean that up and it would go away, but it didn't. But right there, let's see, that was actually throwing sparks right across over to there. So as far as I'm concerned, this thing's not worth repairing. So I actually paid less for this thing than I spent on shipping to get it to my house. So obviously if I keep this thing together and sell it as a complete unit for parts, I'm not going to get enough out of this to get my shipping and everything back out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to part this out. I know the DMM section works perfectly on this. I can't remember if I showed that on the video or not, but I used my little calibrator and it was dead on and worked very well. And I'll probably sell this main board too. And you say, well, why in the heck would you do that? Well, these switches on here are in perfect condition. I pulled them. I had to actually unbolt them some so I could get this out of the chassis. And if you look at the contacts on there, they all look that good. They're in perfect condition. Now, unfortunately, this one here, I don't know if I did this when I disassembled it or whether it originally came this way, but the coupling broke. That's for the calibration adjustment. So I'm sure you could probably, if somebody were to want this, they could come up with another type of coupling for that, or glue this one back together. This is what they should look like right there. They had kind of like a, coupling to where it made up for misalignment, I guess. But that, I'm listening to radio instead of talking. The Pirates are losing again. But anyways, that coupling's broke, so that's no good, but everything else seems to check out really good on these various switches. And there's all these switches in the front panel here that are all still in good shape, all in one piece. They're not broken off. So even though this main board is essentially junk as a total unit, there are actually a lot of good parts on this main board. So I'm going to sell that as is, and obviously with the caveat that it's junk as is, parts only. But then the rest of this scope is probably not in that bad a shape. Most of the voltages, except for a couple of ones, are being drawn down by that short across the circuit board, obviously, the main board, obviously. But most of the voltages seem to check out just as it should. So I should be able to sell individual parts on this, like the output amp board and the battery charger board here, and the main power supply board back in there, right there. Should be able to sell all that. And also that high voltage transformer there, I could maybe try and sell it too. And basically I'm just going to part this out into pieces and sell each individual piece for fairly low price, $10 maybe, $15. But hopefully if I can sell most of this, and that'll basically recoup the cost that I've got into it. I was really hoping to be able to get this thing to work, but obviously if you've got a couple high voltages arcing across a circuit board, and it's arcing internally too by the looks of it, so it's not just simple matter of cutting a trace out and soldering a wire across. It's really not worth, especially for a 35-year-old oscilloscope, it's really not worth messing with. But visually, this scope is actually in pretty nice shape. It could stand to be cleaned up some, but it really isn't beat up any. It's kind of a, if you think about it, it's kind of a lousy design, having them that close, having those two voltages that close together. And then having the battery, what actually caused this, I think, is the battery itself is mounts right over this area here. You can see the corrosion all around there. And of course, you've got a battery, the battery pack's a NiCad battery pack. And of course, you've got a NiCad battery pack or any other battery pack, you leave it in there for years and years and years, you're going to get corrosion. The battery pack itself was corroded. Obviously, the circuit board in that area is corroded. That's probably what caused the arcing problems. And you can see in here the compartment where the battery was, the corrosion involved. So, you know, it's no wonder this became an issue. You can see even some of the mounting lugs are all turned green. Even that one there. So that's probably the root cause of the problem. The battery probably failed, started leaking. I'm not sure what kind of electrolyte NiCad battery has. That's what these were NiCads. But whatever it is, it started leaking on the circuit board, and I'm sure it's conductive. And when you got 85 volts and 300 and some volts running within less than 1/8 of an inch of each other, well, you're going to have arcing, and that's basically what happened with this. But anyways, I just figured I'd do a post-mortem on this, show what happened to it, and I'm going to part it out, and basically all I'm interested in is getting the money back out of it that I paid for it, which is very little, and the shipping to get it to my door, which is about 3 times what I paid for the unit. So that's what I'm going to do. Start moving on to other projects.